Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, members. In the event of a fire alarm sounding, please use either the fire exits at the front and rear of the building. The fire assembly point is in the market car park adjacent to the Civic Suite. Please note that the meeting will be live streamed. Please switch off all mobile phones or turn them to silent. Before we move to the agenda, I will outline how meeting will be conducted. The committee determines planning applications in accordance with the development plan, unless material considerations indicate otherwise. Decisions must be based on relevant planning considerations only. Members must approach each application with an open mind and must not have predetermined an outcome. Moving on to item 1, apologies for absence. I have apologies from Councillor Brewer, substituted by Councillor Hoy, Councillor Hookway, substituted by Councillor Ince, Councillor Efti, Councillor Gosh, substituted by Councillor Malvina, and Councillor Knight. Okay. Item 2, minutes of the meeting held on June the 16th, the 23rd and the 24th. Are the minutes agreed, members? Thank you. Item 3, to receive declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest? I'm not declaring an interest as such, but I do work on the airport industrial estate where there is an application up, but it doesn't affect me and I don't have any personal issues with it. Moving on to item 4. I would like to remind members that if any member wishes to discuss anything relating to Appendix A for this item, I will need to move that the press and public be excluded from the meeting on the grounds that there would be likely be a disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraphs 3 and 5 of Part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972. Emma Goodings will present the report that starts on page 19 of the agenda.
Thank you and good evening, members. So, as it sets out in section 1 of this report, this is to consider the implications of additional evidence in relation to the Council's appeal position on the site commonly known as the Mount Bovis application, the reference numbers obviously in there in the report. It is not to revisit the decision we made previously on whether to object to the application as a whole, and it is not, as a matter of fact, to determine whether Anglian Water's position is correct or incorrect, but we have had a change in their position in terms of what we can provide to the inspector as part of that appeal. So you'll see in section 2 and section 3 the Anglian Water position, so the original Anglian Water position in 3.1, and then the further positions that we have received since you made your previous decision. Because of that, they have withdrawn their objection to that planning application, which means that the council no longer has the support of the statutory sewerage undertaker in relation to those concerns. This formed reason for refusal 4 within your previous decision and a small part of reason for refusal 2. Because of this material change in the position of Anglian Water, it is our recommendation to you that you no longer pursue reason for refusal 4 and that you remove the 2 lines which are highlighted in the strike-through text in reason for refusal 2. And that full response, so you can see that, is outlined on page 24 and 25 of the report. So that is our recommendation to you based on the officer and legal views.
Councillor Maluva.
Anglian Water's revised position appears to be based largely on 1 year's improved monitoring data potentially due to unusually dry weather. What evidence is there that the underlying sewage capacity issue has actually been resolved rather than temporarily masked? And then secondly, has Anglian Water assessed the long-term impact of an additional 350 dwellings and associated development on the network, or is its revised position based only currently on current circumstances?
So Anglian Water were consulted on the application, so they know that the application is in this location for this number of homes, and as set out in the report, they have removed that objection to that planning application. The spill data is as it's laid out in the report, so on page 22. We have no further information from Anglian Water as to any more detailed assessment of that. We do know the spill data. The spill data is there and it's published. We do know that they have not upgraded the infrastructure, but nevertheless, they have made a decision that as the statutory provider, they no longer object to this planning application. And that is what puts us in a very difficult position.
So we know 2025 and also this year has been an exceptionally dry weather. For instance, if in 2027 or when this site is available with the additional capacity, do we know whether the system will be able to cope? Thank you.
What we know is that Anglian Water do not object to the planning application. And as statutory consultee, we do not have any evidence to go against their view. We have to take it that they know their system better than we do, and that an inspector would put significant weight on the fact that the statutory undertaker, the statutory provider of that service, does not have an objection.
Councillor Reeves, please.
Thank you, Chair. I have to say, in consultation with the legal team in preparation for the appeal, I understand the difficult situation that we're actually in. Because Anglian Water, the way they measure the spill, is an average of the last 3 years recorded spills. When we look at the previous 3 years' spills, it comes to over 12. But of course, in this last year, they're reporting just one spill the whole year, which is extraordinary and very difficult to believe. But I understand where our Director of Police is saying that we don't have a leg to stand on because they are the statutory body. It is enormously frustrating. I've met with the lady who's going to be representing us at the appeal this afternoon, and she said that she's actually asked for the last 20 years worth of spill rates. Surprisingly, Anglian Water haven't got 20 years of spill rate. The thing is as well, when it comes to looking at the situation where this is such a drastic change in their conclusion, and we know that there's been no improvements, and we know, as Councillor Manveo has said, that it's been a very dry year, so the chance of having a spill as a result of heavy rainfall is minimised. It looks to me like the likelihood of this actually happening again in the future is very, very high. Now, I know we can't do anything in this particular application we've got here. We've been caught out. You know, they've played the game, they've won. We can't do anything about it. It's viewed with high degree of suspicion in this council, high degree of suspicion. And I'd like to recommend officers keep looking into this for the sake of future applications. But I do understand the position that we are stuck in, and I understand that if we did actually carry on with this in the way that we have the original refusal items listed, that we could actually be subject to substantial costs. So I think that that is reasonable that we do not impose that on our residents. Thank you.
Councillor Stanley, please.
Thank you, Chair. bears disbelief that they can actually come up with this excuse, I call it, and nothing else. The only thing is, as a statutory body and with the government, they've made an agreement with the government that they will use or they will have the capability of having waste and water combined with the agreement on the government. There is a agreement which has been laid down in law that they can supply the sewerage and the water no matter what or how many properties are there. That is their agreement, sole agreement. Whether they extend their refuge areas or wastewater and decontamination and what have you, that is the agreement with government. And unfortunately, it's not with local councils. It is with the government. And without any more to say, we haven't got any duty at all in saying anything with any statutory people, because that is their agreement with government, not with the council. Although anyone would give you logic that this is not possible. They can't possibly put another 350, which means over 1,000 uses of wastewater going into that system. Over 1,000 uses of that wastewater going into the system. It's just incredible that they cannot have any spills. That's not just rainwater. That means water coming from every property. That is, if they're washing a car down or whatever they're doing, that's what it is. And logic prevails that if they've got spills in 23, 24, it's going to happen. It's going to happen. So all I can say is that our hands are tied. Thank you.
Don't see any other members. Councillor Linden.
Thank you. I totally agree with the members who have already spoken in respect of this being put upon us. Can I have assurances that going forward via the local plan or other means that we are actually addressing this situation to ensure that we don't end up in a similar situation going forward?
Emma?
Yes, as part of the local plan, we have the infrastructure delivery plan, which looks at infrastructure of all sorts. We also have specific studies on strategic flood risk assessment and water cycle study, which deals with water supply. So, yeah, we've got all that evidence coming to support the local plan. So we will have that for future applications as well.
Thank you. I don't see any other members indicating. Members, I'm going to proceed to move the recommendation on page 19 of the report. Recommendation having considered the update evidence from Anglian Water and the advice contained in the exempt appendix to authorise officers to cease defending reasons for refusal 4 and the sewage related element of reason for refusal 2 at the Mount Bovers appeal. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Marriott, thank you. Those in favour of the motion, please indicate. And those against, please. Those abstaining? That is carried, regrettably. You certainly can, Councillor. Okay, members, we'll move to item 5, referred from the weekly list. This is the land rear of Scots Hall Nursery, Sutton Road, Rochford, called in by Councillor Marriott. Mike, would you like to present the report on this, please?
Thank you, Chairman. If you just bear with the system to... here we go. This application is to a site on the eastern side of Sutton Road, known as Scott's Nursery, shown on the plan before you. If Julie, when it's back, can run the cursor around the extent of the site, which is important when we see the next slides, because we're talking about the area at the back, which if you can follow, that's it, that rectangle, that broad area there. Some members will be familiar with what's at the front. We're talking at the back part of the site. Beyond this, there is the sort of northern boundary of the City of Southend limits, plus the Temple Farm industrial estate that's just sort of peeping through at the bottom of the image there. The site has a group of buildings that I've mentioned and a covered display areas to the north of a service road, which is shown as part of the access to the back. And the eastern and southern sides of the land, if Julie can point them out, are bounded like a sea-wall structure where they built the buildings, and the spoil of the land they put like to one side as a mounded buffer. If we can jump to the aerial image, please. This shows the site as it is, and we're interested in the area where the cursor is now. Thank you, Julie. Yeah, we're interested in that part of the site. That's an aerial photograph, what we call bird's eye, like taken out the side of the bird, as it were, showing the 3D as best can. So the applicant has produced this, but it's very useful to help members with the image. That's as it is now. And if we can jump to the three-plan layout, please, this is what's proposed. The blue areas that you see there, I'll try, Chair. Yeah? Okay. On what concerns us here is the planning application is made for the sort of access areas you can see in the sort of the grey triangle-y area at the bottom. But what we're interested in is the 5 blue rectangles, which are the paddle courts, which is what's proposed. And these paddle courts are enclosed, that I'll go into. But if you can bear in mind the location of those paddle courts as we go through the slides in relation to what you've just seen, the area at the back of the site in sort of casual storage, and the next slides to follow. The whole site is located within the Metropolitan Green Belt. And although the provision of outdoor facilities for outdoor sport and recreation are generally permitted, we've seen these things for this committee many times, things like equine uses, football, cricket, other sports uses. To permit a recreational use in the green belt has a caveat that it should preserve openness. So in the case of stables, you get all the grazing land that keeps open. In the case of pitches, playing pitches, you get the grassed areas, playing field, lost only by the clubhouse, changing rooms, car parks and things that might come with it. If we can see the floor plan elevations, because we base our decisions primarily on a plan, hopefully this will come through. You'll see that each paddle court is contained within a glass, and it says in the details, mesh, that the top of the structure is mesh, 3 metres in height and 4 metres in height at the ends, where there's probably greater chance of bounce and overrun. So each court has this sort of compartmentalised arrangement. The applicant, looking at the issues raised by officers, has reduced the scheme from what was 7 to 5. He's trying to meet our concerns, but you'll see from the analysis that officers still feel that this is inappropriate development. If we can jump to the 5 visual from inside, this applicant has been very helpful, not only with the aerial photographs, but they've produced these images. Look, this is what it would look like, or is imagined to look like, inside the scheme if approved. So you've got the sort of AstroTurf surface, and then each, a bit like squash courts are made, each court has its own structure around it in a framing, a steel framing, glass surround. The mesh at the top, which is in the drawings, isn't shown on these images. But what you have got is the extension of some of the framing to form the light columns, which you'll see peering above the overall height. If we jump to 6 plan, it's just another visual. It takes you to the seating area, where there's also a container, presumably to put various bits of equipment and stuff. So you'd have this arrangement probably where players wait till their court is available or socialise or whatever. If we can go back to the aerial image of proposed, please. Sorry, that's plan 7. Now, having looked at an aerial photograph as it is now, this is their impression of what it would look like if it was approved and built. You have the existing containers to the western edge. That's it, thank you. And then you have the proposed area here, the surface, the car parking, the single container and the seating area that we were looking at. So what's before you for consideration is these blue surface court areas with their own enclosures. Members will see that the applicant has also submitted favourable decisions from other councils that are set out by the case officer in the report that, depending how you read them, you might think support the applicant's case, but in looking at them, officers have concluded that they were either related to existing sports facilities. So say this was, I don't know, say something like a sports centre, and it was just a further addition where the recreational uses were already present, or they were smaller in scale, or they were very close to existing built form, perhaps on the edge of something else. That's not the case here. This site, although it's next to a garden centre, is in sort of the middle, as we saw on the first location plan. As such, although they are material, and it's up to what weight officers and members may give to that, officers have been clear that they're of limited weight in the assessment, and that as a result this proposal is more of an introduction of a standalone leisure use and commercially scaled, even though it's been reduced. And it has an effect on openness, given the each structure has its own presence of form, the enclosure, the lighting, the steel framing. So therefore, officers conclude that we recommend that you refuse planning permission for the reasons set out in the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. We have one speaker on this, Mr. Olsen, the applicant. If you'd like to come up, sir, I will allow you 5 minutes. I'll let you know when you have 1 minute left. Thank you.
To all the members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to address you in support of this application. My name is Bailey Alston and I'm the applicant for this proposal, and I'm here this evening to ask you to grant planning permission for the development. The proposal before you has many benefits, and members will be aware that in coming to your decision you need to weigh these against the perceived harms of the scheme. The scheme seeks to consent to build 5 paddle courts on the existing hard standing at the rear of Scott's Nursery and retail outlet. As your office's report confirms, the proposed use is for outdoor sport and recreation, which is not inappropriate in the Greenbelt. It is worth noting that the National Planning Policy Framework and associated guidance upon which you will make your decision contains no specific guidance as to the exact type and nature of outdoor recreational uses which can be accommodated and whether these should be public or private ventures. The courts will be open to the public between the hours of 7 a.m. and 10 p.m. on a full pay and play basis. The courts are fully accessible for all age ranges and can accommodate a range of disabled users. The proposal would initially generate multiple new full-time jobs in the area, with the potential for that to grow for further coaching and teacher roles to be created as the business becomes established and grows. Paddle is the fastest growing sport both in the UK and globally. To open a paddle venue to benefit this part of the borough and provide new correctional facilities to respond to the growing demand from nearby towns and villages. Paddle is an extremely sociable sport which is easy to play and learn, unlike more traditional racket sports such as tennis, squash or badminton, meaning it often attracts those who perhaps weren't so keen on sport at school. The rapid growth in the popularity of paddle was also underlined in Sports England's Active Lines annual survey, which was released in May of this year. The survey found that the number of adults who play paddle twice monthly doubled from 23,000 in 2023 to 51,000 in 2024. To date, the East of England only accommodates 124 paddle courts, and this proposal seeks to build on the demand for paddle and provide new facility for the underserved part of this district. While consent has recently been granted for another paddle facility in the borough, this will only provide 4 courts, and there is no guarantee that this will be built out, and demand is still outstripping the supply. Your officers believe that the construction of the courts will harm the openness of the Greenbelt in this location, which we would like to stress. However, the application seeks to consent to construct 5 full panoramic show courts on the site, which eliminates as much of the mesh and steel structure on a standard court. The used clear glass surrounds for all courts will be limited, obviously limiting the mesh. There are no posts or reinforcements of any of the glass panels. It is purely glass to glass, which, as you can see from the CGI images that were proposed, you can clearly see through to the openness of the green belt. This will benefit for the full visibility. The only built form will be one container, which will be used as a reception and welfare facility. The built form on the impact of the green belt is therefore minimal. The CGIs will obviously provide to support that. The courts will be built on the rear of the site, which already accommodates a significant built form. The site itself houses stacked containers and a variety of different storage materials and rubbish, and we strongly believe that the proposed courts will actually improve the current views in the area. In practical terms, this is a difficult use to accommodate within a dense urban area, and this site is an appropriate location for the scheme. Your officers have closely scrutinised the supporting information submitted within the application and have confirmed that no harm was found in respect to the design, visual
One minute
amenity,
left, sir.
thank you, visual amenity, residential amenity, noise, lighting and highways. Enhancements to ecology have also been offered and can be secured by condition, and the landscaping scheme was found to be appropriate and suitable. This scheme offers significant benefits to the health and well-being of your residents and is found to be acceptable in all parts save for the green, apart from the green belt. The uses which not appropriate in the green belt, not inappropriate in the green belt, and the very nature of the design of the course will significantly mitigate harm. As such, we believe that the benefits to the local population will outweigh any harms, and we do hope that you support the proposal and grant consent. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, sir. Councillor Marriott.
Chairman, I brought this one forward for an airing because it's to do with leisure facilities, and I thought it would be useful for it to come to committee so that we can discuss what can be done to try and make sure that, should we agree to this, that it can be done with sensitivity and consideration to surrounding residents rather than just turn it down. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. I've just got a couple of bits I wish to ask Mike, if possible. Do we know what the how many lumens the lights are, please? How many lights there are in total and height of the lights?
Thank you, Chair. I thought I had the height of the... I don't have. I think they're about 6 metres high, but I could be wrong. That's the height of the lights. If we can show the elevation, please, you might get an effect. We know that the height of the court surrounds, I think it might be Plan 3, the height of the court surrounds, I believe, is 3 metres, so you can get a feel for looking at it. It looks as about 6. I think I read somewhere that they are 6. The container is your standard, what we call 30-foot long. It's 9 metres long, 2.5 metres wide and 2.5 metres higher, a rectangular box. And I think these days come new, rather than be leftovers and add their life on the seas. Quite often you can buy these straight from the makers, so they're nice and clean and so forth. So that's the size, 9 metres long, 2.5 high and 2.5 wide. I don't have details. I did look in the application. I didn't author this report, but I had a look on prep to come here, and I couldn't find that the lumens was specified. You can, if you're going down the route of thinking this is acceptable, you can put a condition to a consent to request those details. The issue would be is the necessary justification for it. If this had perhaps been tightly surrounded by residential properties that might cause nuisance, yes, it would perhaps be justified. But because there's nobody nearby, there's some long gardens nearby, but it may be, say, over the top or unnecessary to actually seek to control that. But it's in members' guess. If members would be more comfortable having the confidence that the luminaires would be reasonably acceptable in a residential area, then I wouldn't stand in the way of that. It's only if the applicant were to seek to challenge it and say, why am I doing all this?
Thank you. Councillor Eaves, please.
Thank you, Chair. there's a number of things I'd like a clarification or make points on this particular application. A lot of what the officers have concluded here is based on judgment, and that is something that I feel comes across loud and clear. Policy DM12, the rural diversification. I'm struggling to understand why there is so much of a problem with this in the particular area that it's actually in. We do have an area there that has been allocated to Scott's Nurseries and been used by them for a long, long time. So my question there comes is this something that actually constitutes grey belt? A clarification on that would be really helpful. That's one thing. Having this application approved would, according to officers, result in an urbanising effect. I'm struggling to understand why it is that you're concluding that it's having an urbanising effect. So a bit of clarification on that would be good. Visual amenity, I can see that the applicant has gone to the extra mile to try and make sure that the visual amenity is kept as clear as possible. I mean, it's going to cost a hell of a lot more to have glass around those courts than netting. So I think we need to applaud them for actually at least going down that route. Mike, you've said to yourself that there aren't that many properties anywhere near, but one of the things that has actually come out in the report has been the effect on other residents in the area. So I'm kind of conflicted on that one. And I'm struggling to understand why that is the case. Perhaps if we could just have a bit of clarification on those, I would be grateful. Thank you.
Mike?
Thanks, Chair. While the image was up, or it was up, we could see the height of the luminaries. Yeah, just briefly. Yeah, sorry. And then I want the first image after that, just to remind members of the height of the luminaries as we had it on screen. So if members have that in their mind's eye, I don't think it's an issue we're speaking to, but sort of a legacy of the debate earlier. If we could look then at the first image, I think it's Plan 2 maybe, the one that shows the storage as it is already. The extent of the approved sales areas are the sort of buildings and the open displays you've got in front of the canopies. If Julie can go, that's it, that area there, that's like the approved sales area. This is like open storage or just hard standing behind is where we're talking about. Now those storage pallets or what have you, piles of earth, they don't have real permanence. And that's what the issue is for officers, that when you put structures on land, they're permanent, they're bolted to the ground. There is a slight confusion that the plans that we just saw, don't go back to them, Julie, that's what you're approving and they show framing. Yet, as the speaker did say, the visuals show glass. Now, if members were minded to approve it, you might wish to have plan details of the glass structure, which is less heavy than the framing that's been submitted with the planning application. You mentioned urbanisation effect. This isn't a housing area, but development like industrial units, airports, the head terminals, things like this, the housing areas, they're all part of, if you like, urban development, man living, and sports facilities are a form of urban development. That's why we mean the general term urbanisation. It can mean a number of things, but the idea of the green belt, it should be open and free of structures. Now, some are there of a necessity, garden centres, farm buildings, existing dwellings, but the responsibility of the planning authority, if it's a green belt area, is to permit what government allows in terms of recreation. And we spoke earlier about sports pitches and horses and things. But in officers' view, it's the structure and the permanence of these things for a sporting use, which we've approved something similar, it's in the report, in the Purdy's industrial estate, I think in one of the industrial units. So it's not that we're against this form of sport, it's the fact that it's in the open. If it had been in some kind of farm building that's vacant or something, we wouldn't probably be having the argument. So the last point raised was grey belt. Now, I think there is a lot of confusion between something we call previously developed land and grey belt. Grey belt is, if you like, a weaker green belt. What the government did in December 24, they said in a green belt area, and Rochford has got much of this, if your green belt, there's 5 performances, if you like, the government took out 3 of those. They cherry-picked 3 of those. One of those was that if the site performs well on protecting the historic core. So imagine if Pagglesham, those of you familiar with it, it's mostly all a conservation area. Imagine for a second Pagglesham was a town, and you put development next door to Pagglesham, if it were a town, that development would impact the historic setting of Pagglesham. Our actual historic cores of like Rochford and Rayleigh, they are surrounded by suburban development. So pretty much Rochford's green belt doesn't impact on that third criteria, okay, because it's all built around, you've got intervening development before you get to the core. The other 2 are that the land performs a function in containing urban sprawl and the spread of towns. Now, this site is fairly well removed from the towns. I mentioned at the beginning that the edges of Southend are further down the road, but this site doesn't adjoin it, like perhaps the football stadium would. Yeah, this doesn't, in my view, on the hoof, without studying it deeper, satisfy that weakened green belt test, which is now grey belt. So you might argue that this is previously developed land because of the storage, but the storage isn't fixed. It changes from perhaps month to month or season to season, probably more. Yeah, there's not fixed polytunnels there. There's not containers. It's the sort of east of the container row. So when you develop previously developed land, the impact of what you provide solid must be better, or if you like, less in impact than what is there solid now. And there isn't solid stuff that all moves around, be it piles of earth or materials or whatever. So it may well fall within a wider tranche of land that is grey belt. It's probably pushing it a bit if you think it's PDL, but members may think that, and then if you satisfied it is permitted, it is previously developed land, then different policies kick in that would probably enable it. But officers have looked at that, satisfied that the storage areas are so movable that it doesn't really equate to a strong case for PDL, and that the courts themselves, they're sort of fixed to the ground, they're bolted to ground, they're permanent. Yeah, and then with all the little enclosures around it, that has an impact. So it's not like a football pitch with a clubhouse in the corner. It's that keeps the openness. This is every part of the court is eroding openness, and that's why we've taken the view we have in assessing it. Hopefully that's clear, Chair.
You wish to come back, Councillor?
Yeah, thank you, Mike. I think green-grey belt is a continual confusion to us at the moment until there's much more in the way of application clarification. The one thing that springs to mind is obviously next door to this site we had the training ground for Southend United, which we approved, and that had some pretty substantial buildings on there. That came with agreement that it had special I forget what you call it now. Special circumstances, that's it, yes, thank you. And so I think a lot of people will be looking at that and seeing it's next door. We gave that approval, but this is a sports area and this is not getting approval, and it seems rather contradictory.
Mike?
Thank you, Chair. Hopefully not contradictory. I think what the issue was, the sports pitches, as I said earlier, they're open, perhaps with one large enclosure, and if you call the buildings in the, I didn't deal with it, but I think there was a training classroom and training rooms, and there was a viewing gallery, and it was like the Teletubbies, mounded into the ground. Do you remember? So some of it was excavated and sort of sub-basement. So they were addressing the green belt issues by the way they designed the scheme. trying to suppress the impact. But the difference to this is that the training area itself was one enclosure, whereas what you've got here is 5 enclosures. And that's the difference. It is a similar thing, and I take the point, it's probably floodlit as well, but the fact that this is small little plots, each enclosed to some height, 4 metres in some parts of it, that is what makes the difference for officers, because the national policy says, yes, broadly, sporting access to the countryside and green belt is permissible, but it must maintain openness. And what we have to decide is whether, like the sports pitches at Southend United, they still maintained openness, like a group of stables and the grazing land maintain openness, like a football pitch and a clubhouse maintains openness, as opposed to individual boxes almost, albeit made of glass and with other apparatus. Do they maintain openness? And we've taken a view here that it's crossed the line, as it were. The openness is compromised. So that's why we're recommending to you the way we are.
Very quick, Councillor.
Very quickly, I think you've just underlined that the decision that has actually come out of this it's a judgment call. Yeah. Thank you.
Councillor Stanley, please.
Thank you, Chair. The things that have come up in my mind is the fact that instead of being an open field, if you like, where all we've got is stuff that's being, if you like, held by the garden centre for their purposes. This would be, I believe, I don't know if I'm right, but I believe would be ground covered. The water would run off somewhere. Now, there are properties at the side of the garden centre, and I just wonder if the water water runoff from the site, whether it be from the car park and the pitches or whatever, that would go into the property next door, and that would be something which would be instrumental in having the openness of the green belt. Because if it was grassland and the pitches were grassed, then that would be opened like they do have cricket, where we've got the cricket pitches. It's open field and that's it, sort of thing. But where it's tarmacked and what have you, you need some sort of drainage there, some sort of collection of water, because otherwise it's going to go to either side and could really sort of interrupt. As for the lighting, is this, to have the lighting means that you're going to have to use it when there isn't daylight. So would the lighting interrupt with the people that actually live to the side of that site? Would that be, is that still going to be allowed, that sort of thing? Because it's going to be working till 9, 10 o'clock at night, maybe? I don't know.
Mike.
Thank you, Chairman. Ours first. The applicant has said 7 a.m. till 10 p.m. The actual application says 8 till 10 p.m. Okay. So on a winter's morning, it could be in use. On an autumn evening, it could be in use the lights. And then you'd have, if they're open till 10, you'd have people dispersing, packing away, saying goodbye, etc. So if we look at the location plan, you'll see hopefully the answers to the two questions. The properties you say, there's some, the actual property itself, if Julie can run the cursor, yeah, that's better. If you run the cursor over the ones to the north, just where the houses are, yeah, and then there's another one or two beyond. It's all about relative harm. If you've got a luminaire right outside somebody's house, almost like a street light, yeah, then there may be the impact in the home. But where this is parked at the back, that's why in answer to the chair earlier, I said that you could consider this if you were looking at conditions. But given that distance, by the time you get some light, is that light harming the occupants of those dwellings? Is it so far away that it doesn't, disturb the enjoyment of their homes? That's something members have got to consider, rather than saying, we put a condition on. There has to be a reason to justify it. And I would suggest that those houses are a significant distance away with intervening buildings that are already there, that it may not be that harmful. But if it makes a difference between members finding it acceptable or not, then the condition would be justified. Just before I go, if Julie can run the cursor along there's a water course at the back. Now, I think two things. Normally, runoff may drain to the existing water network, which is what it should do. But we're in times where possibly these people, there's nothing in the application, but they may be looking to harvest runoff themselves for use in the centre. So we could seek drainage details from the applicant, if members wish, so that they're clear that there isn't any need to get into conflict with adjoining neighbours of riparian rights. But it's sort of grazing land or grassland to the north in the curtilage or the extended land that goes to those owners. It's not their gardens as such. But there is a watercourse that's likely to take natural runoff, but I would suggest whether the applicants might indeed be looking to capture runoff in the future, if not right now, for events like what we're going through in the weather, because there's probably going to be a need to harvest rainwater, clean it and reuse it. But with no details of that in the application, so to a large extent I'm speculating, but if members feel they would approve this, a condition might be necessary or to consider to include the drainage details.
I was going to say, Councillor, in response to your first question, most of those courts these days, with the new technology they use, they're actually porous, so the water goes straight through. There's not a runoff from, depending obviously on what.
That just depends on what material is used at the time. But what we've asked in the past for big developments is to have some sort of retention of water on site so that it disperses as it should do. Because if that floods, if it goes to next door, we're looking at different weather, climate changes in the future. If it goes to next door, it will be a complete flood on that grassland and won't be able to use it. So that's the reason why I brought it up. It says the development therefore fails to meet the requirements of paragraph 154B or paragraph 154H and V and cannot be regarded as appropriate development in regard. Could you explain what those paragraphs are, please? Thank you.
I'd have to look it up, Chair. I don't know if you want to go to other questions, if there's any while I do that.
Councillor Malvia, please.
Thank you, Chair. A couple of questions quickly. Given that the proposal's already been reduced from 7 courts to 5, what specific level of greenbelt harm remains that the officers consider justifies refusal? And then secondly, you've placed weight on the approved Purdy's Way paddle facility. Has that actually been delivered? Thank you.
Chairman, I don't know if the Purdy's one has been delivered. I think it was approved last year, but I haven't heard. It's not in the report, so I can't clarify that. And sorry, because I was looking for this, I missed the other question.
So the first question was, given that we're reducing the number of courts from 7 to 5, what specific level of greenbelt harm remains that you're proposing refusal?
Yeah, put simply, Chairman, at 7 courts, officers were concerned at the proposal. The applicant was advised or come to learn of that and felt that they can moderate for members, trying to help work with us, yeah? But still officers feel, well, it's the impact of the structures I've mentioned, hopefully that is clear. So 5 is better than 7, but in officers' view, it doesn't overcome the where it ticks over from being an acceptable use for recreation in the green belt to an unacceptable or inappropriate recreation in the green belt. It's the presence of structure which is the difference between us and the applicant.
Please do.
So if the proposal was to reduce it further, would you consider acceptance or no?
Sorry, I don't understand the question. Could you say it again?
So if you were to go down from, let's say, 5 to 3 or 4, would that change your view?
Chairman, no. It's to do, as I said, with the presence of structure. Okay, so if you imagined you had a developer building in the green belt on an open piece of land, and they come to you with 7 houses, and you said they're inappropriate, and that developer come back and say, well, okay, what about 5? 5 is better, but it's still built form presence in the green belt, where if you could argue 1 is unacceptable. Okay, so it's not a matter of numbers, it's a matter of design. What's bothered me slightly this evening is that the speaker has suggested that the design is different, it's mostly glass and less solid, but the plans that have been submitted that we rely on show steel framing. So you've got a steel frame containing the glass structure, and that adds to built presence. I think the applicant has got a scheme he's got in his mind, whereas he says, well, look, you wouldn't see it because it's all glass. But what if that glass is slightly tinted? So therefore, it's not invisible, if you like, as well as the blue surfaces. So you could consider a revised design if it was refused. But if you was to vote and say, well, let's defer it, let's have a redesign, we'd have to reconsult and see what it looks like. I'm not convinced that unless it's a radical redesign of some sort, that it could be acceptable. One other thing to bear in mind is that with the new Prime Minister, and I think the outgoing Prime Minister was producing national guidance, I'm not aware that's been published yet. Whether they're holding that back for the new Prime Minister, you might find that there's tweaks or refines to our Greenbelt policy that suddenly make this acceptable. We just don't know. So we have to decide it on the basis of what's submitted. There may be other options, and it may be very frustrating for the applicant to pay all the money out and go again. But the policy could change to his benefit, could change to his disbenefit. Based on what we have right now, that's what our recommendation arrives at, which is for refusal.
Councillor Constable, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My concerns with this application is the road that it's situated on. This is a 40, 50 mile an hour road, and there have been a number of accidents there during the day with people entering and exit the site. My concern, if this is going into the evening, where the road is dark, where there's no street lights, that this can become an accident black spot. And that is really my concern with this development, the fact that they're going for now they're normally finishing about 4:30, 5 o'clock, and they're talking about people coming out of their gone 10, probably up to 11 o'clock at night time, their staff finish work. So that's my biggest concern with this development.
Thank you. Councillor Linden, please.
Thank you. Regarding Councillor Constable, I saw in there somewhere where it actually said that they've got no objections, but I do agree it's a very fast road, so sometimes you wonder. We spend, as councillors, our days fighting Greenbelt. No, no, no. So when you get an application coming forward that's actually saying you want to build on Greenbelt, and we're sitting here debating the reasons why, I get a little bit confused because we're going against what we have promised to our residents that we will fight on their behalf. Saying that, the NPPF actually does state that paddleboards on Greenbelt is allowable as long as there are not solid structures around it, and everything that I've actually seen regarding the design of this particular application, I can't see that there is any reason. And then basically, if it is enabling us to go out there and getting fitter, healthier, I actually would applaud that. But yeah, my fight is against myself. We fight Greenbelt on a daily basis, and now we're sitting there going, oh, let's build on Greenbelt. But the NPPF does actually very clearly say, and it does link it to paddleboard courts, that this is acceptable to build on Greenbelt. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Myers, please.
Thank you, Chairman. The crux of this matter, I feel, we've all danced around lights and other bits and pieces, but the actual report says it's intrusive onto the green belt with the structures that he wants to put there. When you consider they're 3 metres high, floodlights on top, you've got the container coming along with it, I think the report was quite right to object to this proposal. And if we permit this and other bits and pieces, because at the end of the day, this is a horticultural business. It's not Garran Sports Centre. It's not Clements Hall. What is a paddle court doing at the end of a garden centre? In the middle of a green belt, it shouldn't be there.
Thank you. Mike, did you wish to come back?
Not on that point, Chairman, but I think I can answer.
Councillor Stanley.
Yeah. Paragraphs 154G, where they talk about exceptions to the green belt in the MPF, so they limited infilling, like when you perhaps build in somebody's garden in a built-up area, or not, as the case may be, between houses in the green belt. The partial or complete redevelopment of previously developed land. Okay, that's paragraph G. It also refers to material change of use to residential or mixed. Sorry, paragraph G. G and H, I think, is B. So paragraph B. Paragraph B is the. I'll read it to you. So this is what can be allowed in the green belt under the current MPPF. The provision of appropriate facilities in connection with the existing use of land or a change of use, okay, including buildings, so say the container, for outdoor sport, the point we're describing, outdoor recreation, cemeteries or burial grounds, and allotments, okay? And here's the bit. As long as the facilities preserve the openness of the green belt and do not conflict with the purposes of including the land within it. And that's where officers are. Yes, it's a recreational use, but we're saying, in our view, it conflicts with that purpose because of the built form, the house comparison that I made earlier on. It's not obviously as big as a house. But the other one I was asked, H, that is, there's a list here of other forms of development in addition to A to G, and they include mineral extractions, engineering operations like building of reservoirs and things, local transport infrastructure like park and ride and stuff, the reuse of buildings, providing that buildings are permanent, substantial construction because they're already there, they're already causing harm, so let them have something else. Materials, changes of use of land, such as changes of use for outdoor sport or recreation, or for cemeteries and burial grounds. Okay, so space-hungry type uses. And then lastly, development including buildings brought forward under the community right to build or neighbourhood development order.
Thank you, members. I don't see any other members indicating. It is proposed that the committee resolves to determine the application having considered all the evidence. The recommendation is one of refusal. Reason for refusal is found on page 62 and 63 of the report. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Stanley, thank you. Those in favour of refusal, please indicate. And those against, please. 3. That is, any abstentions? 1. That is refused. Thank you, members. Moving on to item 6. Horseshoe Farm, Lower Road, Hockley. It's called in by Councillor Constable. Mike, if you would like to present this one, please, again.
Thank you again, Chairman. If we could start with the location plan, just to familiarise members where we are. It's on the southern side of Lower Road, about a mile east of the junction made with Church Road in Hockley. If Julie can just follow the cursor around the outline of the site, please, just so that members can see. If we can now switch to the location plan aerial view, on the site are a group of former agricultural and equestrian buildings, but which since the 1990s have been used for storage uses and more recently lawfully authorised for mixed purposes, including manufacturing, research, as well as offices. The site is within the Metropolitan Green Belt, and the uses and the buildings on the site constitute previously developed land. You've got buildings here in a use, and that is PDL for the purposes of Greenbelt policy. If we could jump to 04, the proposed site layout, what the applicant wishes to do is to demolish those existing buildings and their uses and do a development of 4 identical 4-bedroom houses with a private drive going into the depth of the site. If Judy could run the cursor over the private drive and the turning head, please. You'll see there's parking for each dwelling at the standard of 3 spaces, either a garage and 2 or 3 spaces for each dwelling, because this is in an area of low connectivity. So the parking standards require that extra space for the 4th dwelling. And there's 1 visitor parking spaces. The visitor requirement is 1/4 of a space per dwelling. You've got 4 dwellings, that equates to 1 space, which is the pink one, if Julie can just cursor it up at the entrance to the site. If we can just quickly look at the elevations and floor plans you see, it's rare for a developer to come to us with 4 identical houses. That's not necessarily a bad thing because it gives the development identity. And these, I think, are quite unwelcoming in that the design features this architectural crosswall through the building. It has a central entrance feature, which you'll see in a lot of urban areas, focusing the best design on the front. But this architect has carried it through and shows it on the back as well. So you've got relatively good looking elevations all round, which is not something I think this committee sees often. If we can see just the triple garage and then go back to the site layout, please. Because the site is previously developed, the part of the policy takes us in a certain direction that we actually touched on in the previous presentation. So it becomes appropriate. The swapping out of one kind of built form and use for a different kind of built form and use, it doesn't have to be residential, is appropriate, because you're dealing with, if you like, harm to the green belt that's already there. So by taking what's there away and putting something else back, particularly if it's deemed to be better, which you'll see from the officer's report, there's less floor space and less volume here. So, and there's more space between the houses proposed, or would be if they were allowed. So instead of having a big mass of sort of former agricultural industrial buildings as one big imposing mass, what you'll have is less mass interspersed with space between, which is better in officers' view for openness. So you'll see that the homes, as I said, are good design. They range between 135 and 184 square metres in garden area, well above your standards. They have a good relationship with the neighbouring dwellings, again, because they're in a spacious location. They meet the parking standards, and therefore the recommendation is approval subject to the conditions set out in the report.
Thank you. We have one speaker on this. It's Ms. Nair from Smart Planning. If you'd like to come up, I'll allow you 5 minutes and let know when you have 1 minute left.
Good evening, Chair and members. This planning application is for 4 houses with gardens, landscaping and garages at Horseshoe Farm. The site lies within the Metropolitan Greenbelt. The houses are well designed and traditional in character, with elevations of brick and render with clay tile roofs. Canopied bays are provided to the front elevation for detail and interest. Glazing to the rear is an attractive feature and allows for light to pass into the main living areas. Large private gardens are provided, along with landscaping proposed as part of the ecological submissions, resulting in over 150% habitat improvements over the existing site conditions. The site is previously developed, with a number of large commercial buildings and hard surfacing, all in commercial use, certified as lawful in 2021. As the site is previously developed in the Greenbelt, paragraph 154 of the National Planning Policy Framework applies. Whilst development in the Greenbelt is normally considered inappropriate, A number of specific and important exceptions apply. Relevant to this application, Criteria G specifies one of these exceptions as limited infilling or the partial or complete redevelopment of previously developed land, whether redundant or in continuing use, which would not cause substantial harm to the openness of the greenbelt. There are two limbs or tests set out in this paragraph. Firstly, the site must constitute previously developed land. The site in this instance is previously developed and therefore passes this test. The second test may then be applied and provides that the development should not cause substantial harm to the openness of the greenbelt. In this instance, a significant reduction of built form on the site is proposed. Indeed, the scheme reduces the volume and built form by over a third compared to the existing buildings on the site. Further, the buildings proposed broadly adhere to the existing built envelope. Consequently, there is no harm to openness. Indeed, on this basis, the proposal is less harmful to openness than current site conditions. It's considered that the scheme proposed here unquestionably passes the two tests as set out in paragraph 154G and fits squarely within the policy exceptions, and the principle of development is acceptable. Since the proposal is clearly in compliance with paragraph 154, it is not necessary to engage the provisions of paragraph 155 relating to Greybelt, the provisions of which only become relevant when the tests of paragraph 154 are not passed. While the concerns of councillors with regards to the development of Greenbelt land are recognised and understood, the MPPF and the local plan set out clear and appropriate exceptions to the development of Greenbelt land. The site is not agricultural land or protected landscape in any way. It is fully developed with large buildings and associated hard surfacing and makes no contribution to the landscape character here. Moving on to other matters. Councillors will be aware of the Council's requirement to provide a supply of housing land, and this application makes a contribution to this in a policy-compliant manner. The transport assessment demonstrates that the proposal will have a beneficial impact in terms of highway safety and capacity on the local highway infrastructure. Due to the reduction in movements associated with the scheme proposed, it will also result in a significant reduction in the use of the access by LGV and HGV movements to the benefit of highway safety. Detailed matters of design and layout have been the subject of discussion with the officers and subsequent amendment. Place Services have requested some revisions which have been submitted and agreed.
You have 1 minute.
The Parish Council have not objected to the application. Highways and Environmental Health have no objections subject to condition. No neighbours have objected to the scheme. The application therefore has not proved controversial in the public realm. In the final planning balance here, it's considered the proposal passes the two relevant tests of paragraph 154. It would represent an effective use of land in providing additional housing land, provides significant benefits in terms of improved biodiversity and highway safety, and is of good design in compliance with the MPPF and the local plan. Councillors are therefore respectfully requested to approve this application subject to conditions. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Councillor Constable, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before I start, I'd like to own up that the part that I've put forward there against the development was a cut and paste from an officer's decision of other properties, and as such the last few lines should not have been included. That was my mistake, which wasn't pointed out to me until this afternoon. So I am approaching this item with an open mind, and I am not predetermined. My biggest concern with this application is the fact that it's not sustainable. There's no footpaths, there's no bus services, there isn't anything along that road. We've previously spoke about another development within that road at our last development meeting. That was one house that was not considered sustainable because there was no footpaths and there was no bus service. We're now being asked to approve four four-bedroom houses, which is a lot of cars going out of the morning to work, to school, etc. And there are no footpaths and there are no bus services. So on the basis of that alone, this is not sustainable on that basis. And I look forward to seeing what other councillors think of the application.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Malvia, please.
Just a very quick one. Is this part of the local plan? Question for Director of Place. Thank you.
Emma?
We only allocate larger sites, so no, it's not part. It wasn't identified as one of the sites within the Regulation 18 local plan.
Councillor Stanley, please.
Thank you, Chair. This is very awkward, really, because along that road there are several properties, and yet there is no bus service that I know of. There are several properties, I don't know if you've been down there, but there are several properties down there, and new properties next door to this farm. I know they're single properties, and yet if you go further towards the end of the road, there are 4 properties that have been built on a parcel of land which only had 1 property on. And they're relatively new. So yes, there are considerations to be met. There is no pedestrian access for walking from the property. There is nothing at all. You either walk in the road against the traffic or you get mown down, one or the other. So that's quite unsafe, and because of that alone, and there isn't no transport as such, then I can't see this being considered to be acceptable because of that. Where you would have children just run out, they take no notice at all, just run straight out, and there's no pathway. There isn't even an area where they can play on the site, as there are 4 properties. I do think that should be a requisite if you have multiple properties. There should be an area where the children, pardon?
Recreational.
Thank you, Chair. A recreation area. So on that alone, I think this should be taken out of commission, taken out of context. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I don't know whether I'm right in what was said, because I used to live up Plumber Avenue, and there always used to be a bus service that went from the Dome down to Holbridge and through. I don't know if that's stopped now, is it? Right, okay. That's why I was looking a little bit. Right. Councillor East, thank you for that clarification.
Actually, there is a bus service there, but it's only twice a week.
It's virtually non-existent.
Yeah, exactly. My question on this one is, where you come to item 11 in the report on page 83, where we're actually, in part of the approval, we're saying that we'll provide 6 one-day travel vouchers for use with the relevant local public transport operator, etc. Who is it who actually puts that forward? Is that put through by Essex Highways or by the officer?
Mike?
Chairman, if I may. The way it works, the developer pays, last I knew, about £30. It may have gone up, but they're basically equivalent, I suppose, of a bus pass for the moving family. What the Highways Authority envisage, and there's some evidence to back this up, is that when people move into a house, their life changes, and that's the moment to capture them, to change their lifestyle, to perhaps start using public transport or whatever. So what they do, they get the developer to buy these like year's bus tickets, which is something like 30, 40 quid, leave them in the house as a temptation to start using public transport because they don't have to pay for it. And using them through the year, they get into a new habit of using the car less. So therefore it aids sustainability. Not all households take them up, but I think there is a certain amount of surprising take-up by people who thought they wouldn't use them, but then they find that as it's free transport, they do. And when they're captured in that moment, the idea is they keep that habit, so then they start paying for their public transport and using their car less. That's what that tickets is all about. So that the county require them to pay for the package for each house, and the developer pays for it, and it's like a greeting package when they move in. That's the theory. If while I'm in, can I go back to the MPPF paragraphs, if you
Please
don't
do.
mind, if it saves committee time? You have to look at the MPPF and it's what it allows in the Green Belt as like a hierarchy. And what paragraph 154 does, it says if you've got PDL, then you can allow for it to be redeveloped as long as it's less harmful in the Green Belt. And I've already said that officers think the 4 houses are better in Green Belt terms, openness, than what's there. So if you imagine other scenarios where the site isn't previously developed, like the house we had a committee or two ago, it says look at paragraph 155. And what paragraph 155 says is, look, well, there's certain other forms of development, or development of homes, commercial, blah, 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 in the Green Belt are also appropriate, but there's a caveat that they should be in a sustainable location as per paragraphs 110 and 15 of the same framework, which talk about the sustainability that members are concerning themselves with. So it's only if you get, if you like, let's call it a brand new site, that's where you look at the sustainability. In the case of when you're dealing with a previously developed site, paragraph 154 kicks in. You don't need to go on to consider 155 and the sustainability, because the government has sieved certain types of development form that exist, what you can do with when you've got something to work with, and what you should be doing if you haven't, and you're considering very special circumstances and sustainability. So that's why on one application we were recommending to you, where there was no PDL, to there was a sustainability issue, no footpath, yeah? Whereas on this one, because it's already previously developed and there's traffic visiting the site and there's certain activity, the government themselves say you don't have to worry about paragraphs 1, 10 and 15. Worry about that if you're dealing with a paragraph 155 type of development. We're dealing with a 154, so we don't need to worry about bus services and things like that, even though the Highway Authority, it's just standard practice for them to ask for the tokens to be provided. So if members were thinking of refusing on the basis of 155 and the lack of a footway, there's a risk the developer could go into an appeal and say, I think the council have erred in judgment here, please grant my permission to the inspector, because they've looked at it as a 155 case, but it's really a 154. And 154 doesn't require you to dwell on sustainability, footpaths, alternatives, etc., because there's already activity on the site. So they've created a hierarchy, and officers are content this is a 154 case where you don't need to worry about bus travel and footpaths and things like that. Hopefully I've made that clear, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much for the very clear explanation, but it didn't answer my question. My question was who actually would be the person who'd be putting this in? Is this an officer who would naturally put this in the report, or is it something that Essex Highways would insist on being in the report?
My apologies, Chair, I got carried away with the first question. The County Highway Authority recommend that if you're minded to grant permission, that we put a condition in that requires the developer to go to the County Council, purchase the pack, and as I said, leave it as a greeting package in the house. It's not necessarily done or administered by Rochford District Council. The developers go off and do it with the County Council officers. So they put money aside and to finance this, but the serious reason behind it is the habit change when you go into a new home. That's the most fertile time to try and capture that change in activity.
So in answer to the question, basically it's a bit of both.
But district officers don't administer it. If members follow the advice from county, we put it on as a condition, and then the developer goes off to the county and engages in the scheme.
Where I'm heading with this is that we are encouraged to be looking at modal shift. in everything that comes forward these days. And this, that particular clause in the report there just makes a complete nonsense of modal shift. I mean, I noticed that we've got to have appropriate cycling parking on the site, stuff like that. And it's, I think it was in this one. It might have been another one. Sorry, but I just can't see how this is going to improve modal shift, and there doesn't seem to be any reference to that at all within the report. What's frustrating me with the reports that are coming forward at the moment, when we're talking about modal shift, where it's impossible to be looking at modal shift, I would very much like to see officers actually saying that in the report, that we can't actually see how we can encourage modal shift in this particular instance, but we still can't recommend refusal. In all honesty, I mean, I looked through the report and I can't see any genuine reasons why we can refuse it.
Councillor Hoy, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Eaves has raised the points I was going to make around modal shift, but I think modal shift is dealt with through the parking standards, which I think Mr Stranks mentioned, where it's increased the number of parking spaces. I agree with Councillor Eaves, it's complete nonsense having, I think I agree with him, I think he said this, it's effectively complete nonsense having bus passes where you can't catch a bus. It's the 63A, by the way, Chairman, twice a week. I will support this application, although I do have problems with it. My concerns aren't necessarily, and I need to state them, aren't necessarily about this single one. It probably is acceptable. I think it is acceptable. That's why I vote for it. But my concern is that this isn't the first, and I doubt if it will be the last development along this road. There are other developments of a small number of houses or bungalows being developed in previously developed land along this road, and I'm just concerned that we're going to end up with a ribbon development along Lower Road. I don't know what we do about that, if we can take that into the local plan, but that is my concern. But on an individual applications, I can't see any reason to object beyond that.
Thank you. Councillor Constable, please.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. Regarding the passes, Mike said they're possibly a year pass. It actually says here 6 one-day travel vouchers. I can't see that 6 1 days being anything that's going to get people to change from a car. And like was said, there may be buses that goes along there, but there are no bus stops for people to use. The bus is primarily from Holbridge to the shopping centres. The main reason of bringing this is I've got 4 or 5 different sites that were mentioned in other ones. There's Fairdean, there's Marshview, there's all sorts of developments that have gone on in that road that have been turned down on the basis that vehicles are travelling at high speed on the road and it isn't sustainable. And I just can't. I hear what you're saying about the paragraphs 154. It doesn't do this and it does that, but it just beats me that you can have a situation where one house isn't acceptable but 4 are. And I think there's something that's got to be looked at, either at a higher level or whatever, but it just beats me that we can have 4, 5, 6 houses on a site, but not one. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Linden, please.
Thank you. I agree with all the members' comments so far, particularly regarding the road, and also we're building on Greenbelt again. One thing that does concern me, there's an awful lot of conditions placed on the contamination of the site, and we don't really know what's actually in that site. And when you actually look at the recommendations and the conditions, are we sure that these are actually going to be followed? I mean, it actually says that if they find any further contamination within the site, all building will stop until such time as... There's an awful lot of worry there that, you know, if I was going to buy this houses, I'd look at that and be concerned.
Mike, please.
Thank you, Chairman. There's standard conditions recommended by I think in this case by our own environmental health officers, but they're probably borrowed from a legacy of the Environment Agency that anticipate a load of if this happens or that happened type scenarios. Now, even the best examination of the site, you know, you could go in with boreholes and perhaps miss pockets of contamination that somebody 50 years ago might have, with a JCB, dug and buried. So what they mean is you do your investigation, it comes back with certain results that allow you to proceed, and then when you've got diggers on the site, you hit something that with the best intentions wasn't discovered, wasn't found through the survey. So they say, well, look, you've got to hold everything, find out what it is, find a successful way of dealing with it, and submit all that details for the council's environmental health, in this case, to consider. And if you deal with it responsibly, you clean the site up, get rid of whatever it is, put in perhaps inert fill back to make that up, and that allows the development to proceed. So they want it investigated. If the investigation comes back okay for them to proceed, maybe the last we hear of it. But if by chance they find something that the best survey techniques in the world could miss, and that's possible, there's a scenario in there of what they've got to do if they find contamination. So it's a robust approach in the likelihood that contamination is found, particularly because we're dealing with commercial premises now. You find a lot of perhaps commercial premises, it's not true of everyone, but they may well dispose of certain things by digging a hole and burying and forgetting about it. Well, along comes the housing development later, and in their tests they discover it. So all that condition does is anticipate a worst case scenario and sets out to the developer what we expect them to do to deal with it.
Councillor Lee.
Yeah, thank you. I'm fully aware of the reasons why you put the conditions on there, etc. But it does clearly state that the land is contaminated for a period of 5 years or more. It wasn't known what that land was actually used for. So I'm just highlighting the fact that that land has stated that it is contaminated, and we've got to make sure that if we do accept that, that is very much taken into consideration.
Thank you. Okay, members, I don't see any other members wishing to speak. Emma?
Thank you very much. I just wanted to summarise the position, I suppose. So Mike's spoken very elegantly about the position in terms of why this is a previously developed site, and therefore it is different to a regular green belt, green field, never been developed site, and the reasons why there is different decision making on a previously developed site because of the national planning position and the encouragement from government to develop these sites as a preference to other non-developed sites. As a reminder as well, members, the policy position in terms of the 5-year housing supply, obviously, as you know, is less than 2 years, which means there is a presumption in favour of sustainable development. The weight that you must give to new homes is significant, so you need to consider that as well in your weighing up of this application before you make your final decision.
Okay, members, you've heard from our officers. It's proposed that the committee resolves to determine the application having considered all the evidence. The recommendation is one of approval. Conditions for approval are found on pages 80 to 86 of the report. Is there a seconder, please? Councillor Reeves. Thank you. Those for the application? Those against, please? 3. Any abstentions? None. That is agreed. Thank you, members. Moving on to item 7. It's a plots 9, Airport Business Park, Cherry Orchard Lane, Rochford. Harry Goodrich will present the report that starts on page 89 of the agenda.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. I'm just waiting, hopefully, for the PowerPoint to load up, and then I will get underway. Whilst that's loading up, essentially this application is at plot 9 on the Airport Business Park for the erection of commercial units operating under Class E, G3, B2, B8, with ancillary office space together with parking, landscaping and other associated works. There should be a PowerPoint. There should- Yeah, you can go to slide 2, that's fine. So slide 2 here shows the extent to which the land ownership of the business park extends. Obviously, the ownership extends in a small strip to the northeast, around to the west along Cherry Orchard Way, and extends across the southern edge of the site alongside Aviation Way. The site itself, where Julie is currently showing, is around 1.7 hectares within the wider airport business park complex. The site is located to the southwest of Rochford, to the north of Southend, with access to the strategic highways network, primarily the A127, to the south within Southend. The Southend Airport Joint Area Action Plan, Policy E3, sets out the desired use of the wider business park site. Policy E3 sets out that B2 developments may be accompanied by ancillary storage and distribution use. This would include a degree of B8 use. Next slide, please. So, this slide shows an aerial view of the site, primarily showing how the wider business park is being built out on a plot-by-plot basis, with additional undeveloped plots located to the north and to the east. It is worth noting on this slide the location of the listed building known as Cherry Orchard Farmhouse. It's highlighted in blue there, where Julie's mouse is currently. This is some 50 metres to the north of the site and is a similar distance to that of Costa, also located an additional 50 metres further to the north. As identified within the officer's report, a level of less than substantial harm has been identified to the designated heritage asset. However, when weighted against the benefits of the proposal, the creation of needed business space, the existing erosion of the character surrounding the listed building, and the provision of employment opportunities, the development is considered to provide benefits that outweigh the harm identified by the heritage officer. It is also noted that within the preamble for Policy E6 of the action plan, that a landscape buffer to Cherry Orchard Farmhouse is to be provided for any development that comes forward. And as can be seen in the addendum provided to members, a robust landscaping addition addressing soft landscaping details has been provided, as well as noting that an existing buffer to the northeastern corner is to remain, with the public footpath also crossing across this space. When looking at the proposed uses proposed and their alignment with both the area action plan and the council's own economic development needs assessment, it can be seen that the B8 use, whilst mentioned in an ancillary manner to B2 in the action plan, it's not explicitly set out as an acceptable use on its own. The proposal in this instance would form a complete B2 use, which would accord. The proposal in this instance could form a complete B2 use, which would accord with the area action plan, or a complete B8 use, which would conflict with the area action plan. Officers have considered, however, that given the need for B8 uses as set out within the development needs assessment, that the use considered on its merits, the proposed development is sited in an appropriate location that would accommodate a B8 use, also enabling flexibility to facilitate the B2 use also proposed. Next slide, please. Oh, sorry, one up. Sorry, you were on the right one. I've gone too far. This slide obviously shows the proposed site plan is to include 4 buildings, one along the western boundary, comprising 4 units, one to the northeastern corner of the site comprising 2 units, a neighbouring building located to its south comprising 3 units, and finally a larger building to the east comprising 1 larger unit. There are proposed to be 3 accesses onto the site, one in the northeastern corner serving 9 of the units. This is proposed to provide suitable access for both private vehicles and for lorries to enter the site. A turning head is located to the southern boundary, enabling lorries to turn around as required. A further access is located to the front of Unit 10, which I think is there, thank you. This is to provide access to the parking area for staff and visitors, and the final access is to the rear of Unit 10 and provides access into a secure yard for lorries and other commercial vehicles. The plan also shows some of the landscaping on the site with a number of trees and green spaces planted throughout the site to ensure that spaces are secured and maintained. A landscaping condition is proposed. Next slide, please. So the next few slides are just going to show some of the design features of the building as well as their layouts. As you will see, the buildings proposed are much the same in their finish and layout, with an open plan ground floor and a small ancillary space at the first floor level. Plot 9 of the business park includes the largest of the units, and this being Unit 10. This is to have an internal floor space of approximately 1,528 metres squared. The smallest floor space units on the site are Units 1 and 2, both having a floor space of around 414 metres squared. The total floor space on the site is to be around 6,500 metres squared. The buildings themselves are to be approximately 10.5 metres high at parapet height, with the first floor level of approximately 3.5 metres. All 4 buildings on the site are to be the same height and floor levels. You can just flick through the next few. The buildings are to utilise composite cladding for the walls in a dark grey/black finish, as well as elements of orange at ground floor level to break up the massing and provide an identifying feature to show the accesses to the units. The units are to have a shallow pitch to their roofs with a parapet surrounding them. This will help limit the view of solar panels also proposed on the roof of the units, and will also enable the buildings to be similar in nature to those that already exist within the business park. I would just like to, before I conclude, just confirm that there's a point of clarity. There's a reference in paragraph 30 to the Development Management Procedure Order as 2010. This is a typo and should have read 2015. So, just to close, Chairman, this is an application therefore recommended for approval, subject to the conditions set out within the published committee report and as amended on the published addendum, and is subject to the completion of a unilateral undertaking to secure contributions towards biodiversity net gain monitoring and the travel plan.
Thank you. We have one speaker on this, members, and that's Ms Docker from Boyer Planning. If you'd like to come up, I'll allow you 5 minutes and let you know when you have one left.
Thank you, Chair and members of the committee. I'm Olivia Docker from Boyer Planning, and I'm speaking on behalf of the applicant, HBD. We have worked closely with your officers and appreciate their continued support and recommendation to approve the application. HBD's proposals are for the erection of commercial units on undeveloped land at Airport's business park, known as plots 9 and 10. The new commercial units will provide high-quality employment floor space for either light industrial, general industrial, or storage and distribution uses. By providing modern employment floor space, the proposals will help meet the needs of existing businesses within Rochford and also help attract new businesses, delivering new jobs and economic growth. The proposals will build on the ongoing success of Airport Business Park, which has already delivered approximately 370,000 square foot of high-quality commercial floor space. There has been strong uptake across Airport Business Park, and the proposals will bring forward additional employment floor space that meets current and future demand and will support inward investment into the area. HBD have worked proactively with your officers to respond to comments raised, resulting in a high-quality scheme that ensures the proposed units are in keeping with the existing buildings at Airport Business Park. The proposals have also been sensitively designed in the context of the Grade 2 listed building, Cherry Orchard Farmhouse. As set out in the committee report, the proposals will result in less than substantial harm to Cherry Orchard Farmhouse, while the benefits of the proposal clearly outweigh any harm. The proposals have been amended to further reduce any harm while maintaining the significant public benefits. Furthermore, as set out within the committee report, the proposals will not result in any unacceptable impacts to highway safety, the environment, nor the operation of Southend Airport. In summary, the proposals will build on the success of Airport Business Park and deliver significant public benefits, including the development of 10 high-quality, modern and sustainable commercial units for local businesses, meeting the needs of existing businesses within the district, as well as helping attract new businesses to Rochford, providing up to 35 direct jobs and apprentice opportunities during the construction period, employing up to 183 people when operational, supporting up to 19 jobs off-site across Rochford and Southend, and contributing to the continued success of the Airport Business Park. We're extremely grateful to officers for their collaborative work throughout this project, and we hope you share our excitement in bringing forward this development to Rochford. We therefore hope members will agree with their officers' recommendation and approve the development. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, members. Councillor Malvera, please.
The proposal actually talks about delivering employment benefits. What safeguards are in place to ensure that these will actually be delivered as anticipated? Thank you.
Harry?
In terms of obviously the employment to be provided, obviously we can't speculate ahead as to whether a unit's going to be uptaken or not. We can only work on the basis of we've got the floor space to be provided. The applicant has stated obviously it's going to provide a significant number of jobs. We can't secure necessarily that a unit's definitely going to be accommodated.
You wish to come back, Councillor?
Have you had any potential interest from interested parties or no?
That hasn't been presented to us as the council.
If it helps, Councillor, as I said before at the start of the meeting, I actually work on that industrial estate, and every time an industrial unit's been built, it's been moved into within 2 weeks. So there is a possibility that these are needed before they go to the expense of building them, I would suggest. Councillor Reeves, please.
Thank you, Chair. A number of times in the presentation and from the client's representative saying that the colour is matching what is on site. Is that actually the case? Is black and orange?
That's exactly the same colour as the one I work in.
Okay, all right, I'll take your word for that. Thank you very much. A couple of other things then. The cycling parking on there, glad to see it, but I hate to sound like a broken record. S106 monies that were actually approved on the original JAP site, I believe I'm right in saying have yet to be spent. So we don't have that link to Rochford, which is what the purpose of the S106 monies was for. Can officers explain where we are at with that, please? And just as an aside, one thing that just does kind of irk me somewhat is whenever we have an application for this site come forward, Southend Council always promote it in their anything they put out as theirs. And they seem to have lost the bit that it's a joint area action plan. And if Southend Council are watching this, I would be very grateful if they would actually be a little bit more generous to us in explaining to the public that this is a joint area action plan. Thank you very much. But a question on the S106 would be gratefully answered. Thank you.
Chairman, I'm afraid we can't help you with, because that was the outline and neither of us were part of that and we didn't anticipate the questions, so we haven't got details from you as to what's happening with the outline monies. Just on the reference to theirs, I believe I'm right in saying that Southend Council actually own the site. So though Rochford is the administrative authority, the planning authority, and hence why it's here, the ownership they may be portraying may be the actual freehold. I didn't know if it's jointly owned by Rochford. I know Southend own the site. I didn't know Rochford had ownership of any land.
Councillor.
Sorry, it's just all it is just an acknowledgement of the whole project has been a joint area action plan, not Southend's area action plan. It's joint. Thank you. On the S106, yes, I'm sorry I sprung that one on you. But it is one that is particularly annoying at the moment, that we have S106 monies sitting there and nothing being done with it, and that's happened for years. This was the S106 monies were from the original outline permission.
We do have a bus service going through there now. Mike?
Sorry, Chair, to sort of prolong the point and members' time, but if going forward, if members have questions like this in future when they see reports, if you could give us the chance, a bit of foreknotice, maybe an email a week or two, or when you see the report, we might stand a sporting chance of doing the research. So if members have these questions, if they could give us the opportunity, we might be able to do you a better reply than we've been able to tonight.
Back at you. If you could give us more time to read the reports, then we might.
Thank you, members. Councillor Stanley, please.
Thank you, Chair. As you very well know, I'm very much on the flooding issue, and I don't see any attenuation area there on flooding at all. Is there an attenuation area?
Chairman, having said I know nothing at all about the outline, one of the things I can remember Katie going on at length about is, I don't know if Julie can put the layout plans, this is a plot that was part of an initial outline that was put in with reserve matters for some of the units, and part of those reserve matters put, I don't know if you know, it's on PowerPoint, so you can't make it bigger, but be the first if you could, but oh yeah, okay. So we can't see it anyway because it's not on the screen. But what you'll see in a sec is that the layout of the sites has already got some of the attenuation basins in place. So I think some of the sort of the broad infrastructure, the tanking back and the holding and the management of all the water, etc., is all. I wouldn't say it's true of every plot, but the parent spine of it all is all landscaped and in place and maintained. So all they have to do with this development is sort of plug in, feed in to what's there.
So what you're saying to me is that the whole site has got an attenuation pond or whatever it is that collects the water and is serviced by a management system, because it just says in here it will be maintained by a management company. Now, I mean, I'm looking at it and I can't see, even on that site, it doesn't look to me as though, where's it going to go? And, you know, that's what I don't see it. So I think really we should have put that on there. If we're talking about the attenuation of surface water, then we should have something detailed on there to say that.
Chairman, being a visitor to the workplace that's on there, that's not perhaps the best plan in the world, but the yellow bits that you can see bleeding through to the top right of the corner, there's a big sunken dike, and that, I suppose, holds it all back and eventually discharges to the natural water system, because the whole concept when you're developing these sites, whether commercially or residential, is that they hold the water back like an upside-down umbrella, and then when the rain stops, it seeps away at a slower rate. So there's underground tanking under car parks, there's these open swales, walkways, landscaped areas. They all, in the event of like biblical storm, hold back all the water for discharge when the storm abates. And a lot of that stuff is in place with landscaping, etc. Not very wet at the moment, but it's there.
If it helps, Councillor, and for you, Mike, the dike, as you call it, goes from north to south on there, not across the site. And it's about 1.5 meters deep. So it's quite substantial. Yeah. Don't see any other members indicating. Members, it's proposed that the committee resolves to approve planning permission subject to the applicant entering into a unilateral undertaking with Essex County Highways to provide the following heads of terms. 1. Travel plans, £7,269. 2. Habitat management and monitoring, £8,170, and subject to the conditions on pages 90 to 95 of the report and on pages 3 to 5 of the addendum. Sorry, my brain's gone dead. Do I have a second for that, please? Councillor. Those in favour, please. Unanimous. That is unanimous. Thank you, members. That is agreed. Moving on, members, to item 8. Are you taking these, Mike, 8 and 9 together?
I would prefer to, Chairman, to save time because they're identical, if you're agreeable with that.
Okay, members. We happy with that? Thank you.
Just to clarify that point, members, this is one of these applications we get which is for the same development, but because of the way the legislation is framed, you get a report on a planning application, the FUL, and you get the accompanying listed building report, LBC. So you've got 2 reports there, 8 and 9, slight variation in that the LBC deals with conservation matters, but basically it's the same scheme, and the merits of the report are such that I hope to deal with them together. This site is the former council offices on the east side of South Street, shown on the screen there. If we could jump to the second plan, please. You'll see this is a simple proposal to provide a garden wall, and if Julie could follow it with the cursor for members to see. I don't know if you can expand that a bit. Yeah, that's good. Okay. And you'll see there's an elevation detail that, as I asked for it to be expanded, is missed. But yeah, that'll do. The issue is that 17 South Street, the old house, will continue to, or is foreseen to continue, as a venue for weddings and such like. And what they need is an outdoor space. So at the moment, the gardens left over from the office days were communal. There's a wall further up, but what they propose to do is to create this space by putting a wall across the existing lawn area. And you may see in the detail that at the wall ends there is a timber fence. The reason being is because there's quite decent trees at each end, and obviously if you can put a timber wall with sinking posts, you do less damage to the root plate of the trees. So it's all for the good of retaining the trees long term. So it reinstates walling, not necessarily in the same position, but formerly, before the council took them over as offices in the 70s, these were substantial houses, and therefore they were likely to have various walls for their own garden areas. This reintroduces a wall and fence detail. I'm not saying it's in the same position as it used to be, but it's a residential type garden wall in the garden wall bond, and the fence panels are vertical in a traditional style, and they're necessary because of the, as I say, the trees on the end. There's the typical detailing, if you can see it. I don't know if you can zoom in on the brickwork, Julie. But there's no heritage objections. They're all in support of it. There's no objections from the council's arboriculturist in respect to the trees. It's been done with all that in mind. It's a council scheme. So the recommendation is on the planning application to approve, and then on agenda item 9, the listed building application, the same, to approve that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Marriott, please.
Will the fencing and walls be within keeping with the area?
Chairman, the brickwork is going to be an orangey burn. Members may be familiar that Rochford, out of the, I think the Cherry Orchard Works and possibly the Star Lane, but when fired, that local brick takes a very orange hue. It's characteristic of Rochford. No longer are those bricks produced locally, but the agents for the council are sourcing a suitable brick that the conservation advisors at county are happy with to reflect that local design and style and vernacular.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Stanley, please.
Just one point. Will this wall that is the application is for, does it show any piers in the wall, as you should have piers in the wall if you're going to build one wall without any supports to it? So I'd like to know where those piers are, if you've shown them on the drawing, please.
Chairman, we're working on that. The middle plan that I showed, that's coming up before you now, shows buttresses as opposed to piers, which are the sort of spinal supports that come up on the wall. If we can zoom in on the image, you may just see those ghosting through those lines. I don't know if you can follow them on your cursor, perhaps, just to highlight to members. But it has the piers you're requesting. It has the strengthening spaces that a wall should have.
The reason that I asked that is that because of the elevation of the area and how windy it gets, we need to make sure that the structure is sound. Even after 2 or 3 years where the weather has got at it, we need to make sure the structure is sound, because if it's going to be used as it says in the way of flats and what have you, it's a dangerous situation that could actually fall down and hurt somebody, rather than ordinary panels, wooden panels, don't necessarily, you can get away with that, but when you've got a wall this size, there is, it needs to be constructed really, really well. Thank you.
I don't know how many of the councillors that are here have ever been in the back garden. I believe Councillor Hoy had, and you have, so you'll know how the brick walls at the back are built. And I believe that what they're doing is trying to replicate those, so it's all within keeping. Mike?
Chairman, if it helps, on the screen you'll see that they've helpfully done a foundation detail, and you'll see at the bottom the wall is slightly wider to take the loading and the stresses, and then with the buttresses that we mentioned earlier, and then the bonding pattern, garden wall pattern, like the walls that are there, it follows through. So I think, in as far as you can from a planning point of view, I think you can be confident that it'll be robustly built. You'll see the depth of it, look, foundation in the ground, and the brick coursing going down into the ground as well.
Councillor Reeves, please.
Thank you, Chair. Maybe I'm being a bit nitpicking, but the Essex County Council Place Services contribution to this, with the age of the building that is actually next to it, I'm rather surprised that they actually haven't mentioned anything about any sort of relics that might be found there. It is a very, very old building, and that looks to me like that foundation is going to go down quite deep. So it's just an observation, really, more than anything. Thank you.
Chairman, I'm not sure if it's the problem of doing a joint presentation. I think the archaeological request is on the listed building one, I think, if I follow. It's not. I thought I had seen one. It may be another application I was looking at. I mean, if members wanted to impose the condition, in case there are fines, you know, we could do that. The archaeologist hasn't asked for it, but if members think there's an opportunity, and given it's in the historic core, it might be justified.
Would you think that would be reasonable?
Yeah, why not?
Okay. There you go then. That's your answer.
The applicant isn't going to appeal, is he? So.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Ince, please.
Thank you, Chair. Can officers confirm why they are satisfied with the proposal preserves the significance of the...
Can you move closer to your mic, please?
Sorry, I'll start that again. Can officers confirm why they are satisfied that the proposal preserves the significance of the listed buildings rather than merely limiting harm?
I'm not a listed building specialist, but I think what they're speaking to is that prior to office conversion, these were houses. They were of some note. I think one of them was a doctor's surgery. My dad gives me stories of when he had to go there once. But the fact that they were residential properties, they would have had walled gardens. I mean, a lot of the Victorian houses are famous for the walled gardens, and these walled gardens are extensive. But I think what happened either before conversion or at some stage, maybe the individual walls and fencing, if that was fencing, were probably removed. Now, what this does from a significance point of view, it puts back a domestic feature. If these are returned to dwellings, it puts back a wall and fencing that is of a suitable design, therefore returning the significance of the layout as a domestic setting. What I can't promise you is that the alignment of the wall, the position of the wall, is in exactly the same place as one might have been historically. The point about archaeological excavation, they might go digging around and find the wall or remnants of something else. So that's what they're shooting at there. They're trying to say, look, by approving this, you're not harming the significance, you're improving the setting of the listed building, but that's probably as far as I can go on that specialism.
Councillor Stanley, please.
Is it, I'm going to ask, this is a question that, with location and the areas that it was, when it was properties, single properties in a terrace, the brick walls that they had to separate the gardens were very low walls indeed, with panels, with wooden panels above, so you had wooden posts in the wall and just wooden panels. Would that not be a more sensible way of dividing that area with exactly that, which was there originally, than have a 2.3 metre, which is over 7 feet in height, as a brick wall, just to separate the areas. Wouldn't that not be a better solution and an easier way, instead of, brick walls tend to fall down very quickly with weather, and this would be an ideal situation where, going back in time, they used to have very low walls. In fact, they was only about 3 foot high, and then the fence above. So you had wooden posts basically in the walls. So that's all I'm asking is, would that not be a better feature than have this? I know they put the application in for a wall, but seems to me that if we're looking at historical areas, and this is a real historical area, then perhaps that should have been looked at previously.
In my opinion, councillor, it's just going to match the other walls that are at the back anyway, so it's in keeping as far as I'm concerned. But there you go. And I don't think wood will last as long as brick. Did you wish to come back, Mike?
Building on what you said, Chairman, firstly, we don't know what existed there before. Okay, I don't think there's photographic evidence of people who, perhaps when cameras were first invented, photographing their walls. So, as the chair said, if you go by the walling that's there, which is the same height, finished with the same capping, and the detail at the bottom with the white, they're replicating that wall pattern and design into this proposal. They then had to achieve a design solution for the tree problem. And rather than putting horizontal panels in, like we'd probably see in a modern development, they've chose the vertical panels, which are traditional, like you see, if you're lucky, around some, where the junction of Weirpond Road is to North Street is perhaps one surviving example. Probably new fencing, but they've followed the same style. So I'm not with you on the walls with wooden posts in. I've seen those, but only in modern developments. I haven't seen anything like that in old, so I take you on that. But they've, as the chair has said, I'm pretty sure they've followed the cue from the surviving, which is safe territory, hence why the specialists feel that, yes, that safeguards the significance.
Councillor Myers, please.
Just a very quick comment. The architectural report is on page 136.
Thank you. Okay, members, I'm going to take these recommendations separately. So for item 8, I will move from the chair that the planning application be approved subject to the conditions on page 120, 121 of the report. Do I have a seconder, please? I believe that is. Yes. Okay, I'll make sure that it's added onto the paperwork. Those in favour, please, of approval. Sorry, did I have a seconder? There you go, Councillor Reeves. Okay, those in favour, please. Yes, no, it's not unanimous. That was up, is it? Right, sorry, so it's unanimous, thank you. Moving on to item 9, move from the chair that the listed building consent be granted subject to conditions on page 132 of the report. Do I have a seconder for this one? Councillor Malvera, please. Those in favour of approval? That's unanimous again. Thank you, councillors. I believe that concludes the evening's frivolities. Have a good evening, and thank you very much for your attendance.